Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with Phil Putney and myself, talking investing, finance, and retirement, and values-based planning and why that might be essential for you. So we're going to get into what is values-based planning in just a second. But Phil, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Doing good.
Yeah, we are
looking forward to spring, but I don't know. It's going to be a while.
Well, we're taping this the day after Valentine's Day. Were you good? Did you remember?
I was good, but I had a busy day. So
yeah, okay.
I didn't get home from our church board meeting till way after 11. So it's like,
oh wow,
not a good day to have all that go on, but it is what it is. You know, you've been married 30 plus years, and all of a sudden it's another day. It's
Exactly. Well, hopefully everybody had a good Valentine's Day. I was teasing my wife. Her uncle, she hasn't seen in a long time, showed up yesterday on Valentine's Day to visit. We've talked about different people we know, Phil. You do the same, RVing or camping, doing a lot of it. He actually was one of these that sold his house a couple years ago and is just RVing all over the country.
Okay.
And living in his RV. And so he finally made his way here, and I hadn't actually yet met him after 17 years of marriage. And so I was teasing him. I was like, hey, thanks for showing up on Valentine's Day. Now you got me out of having to do anything special.
That's right.
And of course, to your point, right, we've been married a long time, so we had already had plans already set for some other stuff. But it was a nice icebreaker anyway. So
absolutely.
But anyway, hope everybody had a good Valentine's Day if you go in for that sort of thing. But let's talk about values-based planning, Phil. Family is going to be my first one on it. So since we were just talking about that, but when you're sitting down with clients or potential clients, really, I kind of wanted to talk about this because it's not always the X's and the O's, right, or the dollars and the cents. Sometimes people may have some specific, and families are kind of an easy, low-hanging fruit because everyone's going to say our family is important to them for the most part, I would hope. But it's kind of a low-hanging fruit, but it's an easy way for us to kind of break the ice on this and get it going.
Sure.
But values-based planning is like somebody coming in and saying, hey, this is really important to me. This is where I want to focus the structure or the meat of our plan. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to the why. You know, I mean, all the numbers, dollars and cents, you can't ignore that. You have to do that. But at the end of the day, the piece that really matters, that's going to get you through some of the decisions you have to make, is why. What's important to you? What is your value?
Okay.
You know, the old question, what's important about money to you? And why is that?
So let's go to faith. You just mentioned that you were at your church board meeting.
Yep.
So there's some people that may come in and say, hey, listen, our faith is very, very important to us. We want to set up our plan so that we're leaving something to the church, or we're whatever. And maybe even, Phil, do you run into the scenario where some people don't want to invest or do certain things with companies they don't feel morally or ethically aligned with them?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of components to faith and how that fits into your overall financial plan.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it could be time. I mean, that's a big piece of, you know, when you get into retirement, what do you do with your time?
Okay.
You know, so faith might play into it. I mean, if you're very involved in your church or charities or some organization, you know, how does that fit? You know, do you want to spend a lot of time doing that, and maybe some of the resources too?
If we want to bring back in the X's and O's a little bit, when you're working, if you're tithing to your church, for example, and you're giving money, do you plan to continue that into retirement, and are you budgeting appropriately for it? Or even to my point a minute ago, you know, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of people looking at investing in things like the CBD and, you know, and marijuana and stocks and so on and so forth. Some people may come in and say, hey, I don't want to invest in any of that because it goes against my beliefs, or I totally oppose, you know, this company because of, you know, its owner or president or whatever. Right. So that makes your job, I imagine, a little bit more difficult, maybe sometimes, because you have to navigate some of those waters.
Yeah, and there's really two sides to that, because it's the first side of the faith component is, you know, how does that play into the money needed, you know, and time and resources, and the X's and O's part of it. The other side of it is what I would call the implementation. Now that we've got the plan all figured out, how are we going to make it work? The companies that we're going to invest in. Yeah, I mean, if then that's part of that equation where, hey, I don't want to invest in any, you know, CBD or, you know, any companies that are involved in weapons or, you know, drugs.
I don't feel comfortable.
Tobacco, oil. I mean, whatever your criteria is. I mean, that's absolutely something we can talk about and let's make sure then when we're approaching it that you understand pros and cons and whys and how do you make that happen? So,
and I guess just bearing in mind as the potential investor or whatever the case is that you could limit your options. So maybe not. There's a plethora of things out there, so probably not. But just bear that in mind, right?
Yeah.
If you're very much against a weapons-based companies or something like that, but again, it may be so important to you that you need to be sharing that with your advisor so that they know.
Yeah, please do. I mean, don't go in and not share that information like anything. I mean, it's like going to the doctor, right? You're
right.
You got to tell them everything. You know, if they ask a question, even if they don't, if there's something you think is important, and I end that initial discussion with a prospective client with just that, after we've had all the discussion and I've asked everything that I think is important.
Yeah.
Do you think I missed anything? Is there anything that you think is important?
Gotcha.
Lay it out on the table. Let's talk about it, because you don't want to get 3, 4, 5 meetings, 2 years, 3 years into this and realize, I never knew that was a important part of the equation you wanted to talk about.
Right.
We would have done
what
things
were you
different.
Tell me?
Yeah.
So I'm going to move around on this because I don't know if we'll get to all of these, but I'm going to go to ones that I think kind of jump out. Some people might come in and say, hey, listen, we want you to help us build a plan for retirement. Education was super important. We didn't go to college, and we want to make sure that every single one of our kids or every single one of our grandkids goes. Yep. How do we budget for that, right? So that is their primary focus. That changes what you do a little bit, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it becomes part of the overall expense equation, right? And, how do we direct the funds that they've accumulated? And if that is a focus of theirs, then here's how we can do it. Here's what the costs are. I mean, that's where you have to start is, okay, what do we want to plan for? Are we talking like Ivy League schools for all of them and how many grandkids and how many years? And, or you're talking community college, or you want to help out 50%. I mean, what's the number? What does it look
full
like?
Funding? Is it partial funding?
Yeah. And that's not a give me the answer and I'll put it in, or it shouldn't be. I mean, at least how we work it, if any of these, discussion points come up, it's a matter of back and forth. Let's have the discussion.
Yeah.
And then my job is to start putting the numbers in play to say, okay, well, we started out with, you wanted to fund 100%. This is what it looks like,
this is what you're giving up.
The reality is you can't do that if you really want to enjoy a retirement. I mean, if you want to stay home and do nothing and, eat spam, so to speak, whatever, here's your budget down here for retirement. Everything's going to the grandkids. Yeah, you can do it, but that's your choice.
Yeah. I was going to ask
you. Go for it.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, at what point do you have to be the heavy? Right. Because I would want that. We seem to be in a society right now where a lot of times people are like, hey, don't say anything that's going to offend or mess with anybody because everyone's so touchy and we just kind of freak out of everything. But there's certain places where I'm like, hey, give it to me straight, man. The doctor's one, the financial advisor. So if I come in and say, hey, I got 4 grandkids, I want to fully fund their ride to Harvard, and I would want you to look at me and go, well, then you're not retiring. Right.
Or your retirement's going to look a lot different.
Ramen noodles and spam. Yeah.
So, but I mean, I tell my clients, and I'm friends with a lot of my clients, but at the end of the day, my job isn't to be your friend. I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I've got to personally to be comfortable with my job and fulfilling it, and professionally, my fiduciary duty, if you want to think of it that way. I'm going to lay it on the table and say, look, this is the fact.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to do this, here's what it looks like. And it's your retirement. It's not mine. Right. So my job is not to make the decision. It's to show you the pros and cons. This is how we get there. So
this is how we get there. Right. Career. Let's just touch on that one quickly for a minute. Some people feel you're one of them. Okay. You love your career. And you've had conversations. We've touched on a little here and there. You're not ready to retire. You're not sure when you will be, so some people will come in and be like, look, I have no plans to retire. I don't want to stop working. I love what I do, or whatever the case is. Right. But you still, I mean, again, you kind of got to you can't be a yes man. You have to kind of talk and say, okay, that's great. But at what point does your body or your mind override your decision?
Yeah. And it's, again, back to that whole concept of what is retirement? I think we've all been trained to think of, it's a date. Okay, 62, I can get Social Security. So that's my date. I've got to retire. Well, no, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with it. What is retirement to you, and what does that look like? It doesn't mean you don't work. Maybe it means if you love what you do, maybe you just do it part-time. If that's with the same company and they allow it, great. If not, do something different. You've got to retire to something or your own. I mean, if you're self-employed, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because you can just kind of pare back. And, in my case, my son-in-law works with me. So, I mean, that's part of my transition. As I get to that point, he's going to take on more of that and the staff, and I can, be involved in kind of the higher level things.
You could be the big kahuna then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I've always joked, I mean, we travel, we've got an RV right now, and that's our plan. I'm placing clients strategically all over the country. So we'll spend the winter months traveling around in the warmer parts of the country. That's right. It's my mobile office. So.
There you go. All right. So yeah, whether it's part-time, full-time, and we've had many conversations on this on other podcasts, so I won't belabor the point, but maybe do think about that. If you're walking in saying my career is everything, because that's that value that you hold dear, just make sure that you're being realistic and to the point of you might want to work forever, but your brain or your body may say otherwise. Right. So,
and my job, and to me, the best part of that, having that discussion with a client, is going through the numbers and giving them permission, so to speak, the comfort to say, hey, technically you could retire today if you want.
Yeah.
So now the job isn't a job, well, I got to go in because I got to pay the bills. It's okay. If I don't like it today, if it gets to that point where I don't feel like I'm doing what I could do anymore as good as, I was, or whatever the case is, or I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Put your 2-week notice on. And I've had clients do that. I can think of a teacher specifically that we were having that discussion and, I don't know if I'm ever going to retire. I really love it.
Right.
And then COVID hit and went through about a year of that. And she's like, am I still okay to retire? I said, yeah, you're fine. Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks. And she was gone. Every 2 weeks, man, she was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. All right. So we're kind of talking again about these values-based planning. Family was the first one. Pretty easy. You can pretty much wrap just about everything if you really wanted to into family.
Right. Yep.
Maybe it's faith. Maybe it's career. Maybe it's education. I got charitable giving on here, Phil. We kind of touched on that a little bit with faith, but there are people who maybe don't have children, who maybe don't have heirs. And so their focus is to say, hey, I want to make sure I leave everything I've got to my favorite charities, right? So again, sharing that information so that you can, do that as efficiently as possible.
And from a tax standpoint, there's a lot of advantages in charitable planning. And I do a lot of this with clients, especially if that is their inclination. I mean, and it has to be, again, your value, what you want to do. There's tax advantages. That's not the reason to do it. But it may not be, if that's your case, your one of the goals, your values is charity. It may not be the right decision to wait and give that as part of your estate. If that's really your focus, let's bring that into your current plan today and maybe get you personally some benefits. So there's ways to use that to help you restructure and get some tax benefits today that it'll ultimately go to charity, but it just benefits you early on.
And you kind of maybe, that's a great point, because I think the old school way of thinking of it, well, I die, I don't have any heirs or whatever. I'm going to leave it all to my favorite charities or my church or whatever.
Yep.
This way you can maybe do some stuff while you're still around and go be part of that charitable exercise. Maybe it's your favorite animal shelter or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if charity and faith is a piece of it, that's a very significant factor to bring in, because there's ways to structure retirement and even investments and tax strategies around that. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah, definitely. If that's a consideration, make sure your advisor understands that.
Well, those are kind of the 5 biggies. I'm just going to finish off with a really quick, easy one, and we'll jump up out of here. And that's just, don't forget to have fun. And not even just forgetting, but some people, Phil, may come in and say, the heck with all that other stuff. I'm about the fun.
That's right.
I worked my tush off.
I worked for 40 years through whatever it is, whatever your number is.
I want to party.
Yeah.
So tell your advisor, right? So that and obviously if this is your thing, you're going to anyway, but I mean that way, but I think with some of these people, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe they get themselves into trouble because they're that kind of spur of the moment. Ooh, I decided to buy a boat or I did a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be very, very dangerous, especially early in retirement.
Yeah.
If you make a lot of bad financial decisions, spend a lot of money at the wrong time early on. Yeah. I mean, it can derail a plan really quick, and that's where an advisor can be a significant help to you is putting that plan in place and giving you those parameters. I mean, we have that discussion with clients all the time in the plan of, our number was this and it works fine. And, there's should be about this left. If you follow the plan, all the numbers work.
Right.
And we always have that maximum spending, or I call it kind of the guardrail.
Right.
Technically, if we wanted to run out of money, and my version of that is we've got enough to get another 5 years left, so we're not zero at the end, then here's that number, so yeah, we plan for 100 a year, but to bump that guardrail every single year and you have just enough to kind of squeak by for another 5 years, you could spend 120 or whatever the numbers are.
Yeah.
So to give them that comfort level to know, okay, here's the numbers, right?
Right.
Gives them some direction. Let's still have the discussion year over year. I'm not giving you free reign to go and spend 120 a year, because if you do that, we got to be really careful, because you're bumping against the guardrail every year.
Yeah, if you walk in and say, "Hey, I bought an RV and a boat and 2 jet skis and
you said I could
and an alpaca farm, or whatever the case is," then don't be surprised when your advisor says, "Okay, well, now you've shortened yourself, or now we've got to do this, or we've got to make, so just, again, if fun is that value, that's great. Just that could be the one that maybe gets us in a little more trouble, because that can be a lot of spur of the moment kind of purchases.
Absolutely.
Not to say you got to live on a budget, but you also got to be, somewhat realistic. So just make
sure you have to be conscious of what that number is.
Yeah.
The budget isn't something you want to look at, but there's got to be a hard number to know, okay, this is where we're at. So.
Yep. Exactly. All right, folks, that's going to do it. So if you've got some questions about values-based planning and you're not always already working with Phil, you need some help, reach out to him. The number's on the screen, as well as the website on there. It's philstaxhacks.com. You can find all the information at philstaxhacks.com. That redirects you back to Phil's main business website, but that is our podcast website, and you can subscribe to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, all that good stuff. Hit the subscribe button for YouTube. We'd certainly appreciate it. Share it with folks who might benefit from the message as well, or just enjoy our smiling faces as we talk about this stuff every week. So we try to spend 12 to 18 minutes chatting about this stuff, so surely you got a little bit of time in your day to learn a little bit more and figure out how to get to and through retirement. Phil, thanks for hanging out, buddy. I appreciate you.
Have a great day.
We'll see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with Phil Putney.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.